My beloved child, pause for a moment, because something has been moving quietly behind the scenes, and you may not yet understand why your heart has been feeling different lately, but there is a reason. Certain thoughts keep returning to you, certain names keep appearing in your mind, and certain conversations seem to carry a weight you cannot explain, because someone has been thinking about a future with you more seriously than you realize. And what they are considering may change the direction of your life sooner than you expect, but there is one part of this story that has not yet been revealed to you. You may have noticed the strange feeling that something is approaching, even though nothing obvious has happened yet. And perhaps you have tried to dismiss it as imagination, coincidence, or simply your emotions becoming restless, but deep inside, you know there is something different about this season of your life, because when destiny begins shifting quietly, it does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it begins with a thought that refuses to leave, a conversation that suddenly becomes meaningful, or a person who begins looking at you as though they are seeing your future instead of your past, and someone has already started seeing you that way. There is a person who has been carrying a thought they have not fully spoken aloud, and that thought has grown stronger with every passing day, because they are no longer simply wondering what it would be like to have you in their life. They are beginning to wonder what it would be like to build a life with you, to wake up beside you, to make decisions with you, to introduce you as the person they chose, and perhaps even to hear the words that once seemed too far away to imagine, but there is something making them want to move faster than you expected. You may wonder why the energy around this connection has suddenly changed, why silence feels different, why a message from this person carries more meaning than it used to, or why people around you seem strangely interested in your relationship status, and perhaps you have noticed someone asking questions that seem innocent on the surface but feel strangely specific underneath. Because sometimes people ask questions when they already know more than they are willing to reveal, and one person may already be quietly preparing for a conversation you never saw coming. Maybe someone has spoken your name in a room you were not in, and maybe your future was discussed without you knowing, not because anyone wanted to control your life, but because someone believes you and this person belong together. And that belief has become strong enough that they are beginning to encourage the idea of marriage, commitment, and a future together. But the surprising part is not that someone wants this to happen. The surprising part is why they suddenly feel that it needs to happen soon. There is urgency behind this desire, but it is not necessarily the kind of urgency you should fear, because sometimes urgency comes when someone realizes how much they could lose by continuing to wait, and perhaps this person has spent too long analyzing their feelings, too long questioning whether they were ready, too long wondering if you would still be there when they finally became certain, and now something has changed inside them, because they have begun to understand that waiting forever is also a decision, and they may no longer want to make that decision. You may have thought this person was uncertain about you, but what if they were uncertain about themselves instead? What if the distance, hesitation, silence, or mixed signals were never truly about your worth, but about their fear of making a permanent choice, And what if the person who once seemed afraid of commitment is now the same person quietly imagining how quickly everything could change once they finally say what has been sitting inside their heart? There is a reason certain memories keep resurfacing, especially the moments when you felt deeply understood by this person, even without many words. Because some connections are not remembered because they were perfect, they are remembered because something about them touched a place inside you that ordinary relationships never reached, and perhaps you have wondered why you still feel emotionally connected despite everything that has happened. But you may soon discover that the connection was never as finished as you believed. Something has been developing beneath the surface, and you have not seen all of it, because while you were trying to understand what this person felt, someone else may have been encouraging them to stop hesitating, to stop running from their own heart, and to seriously consider making a commitment. And perhaps this person has heard the same advice more than once, until eventually those words began to awaken. Something they had been trying to keep asleep. Imagine sitting across from someone who knows this person well, someone who has watched their behavior change whenever your name is mentioned. Someone who has noticed the difference in their voice, their expression, their silence, and their sudden defensiveness whenever the subject of you appears, and imagine that person finally saying something that makes everything suddenly make sense, because they may have seen the truth long before you did. You may be closer to a serious conversation than you realize, and that conversation may not begin with a proposal, a ring, or a dramatic declaration. It may begin with something incredibly simple, perhaps a question about your future, your family, your dreams, your willingness to settle down, or what kind of marriage you would want someday, and you may think it is just casual conversation until you realize they are not asking because they are curious. They are asking because they are trying to understand whether there is room for them in the future you imagine, and this is where the story becomes deeper, because someone wants you both to get married at the earliest, but the person who is being encouraged may be carrying a fear you have never seen, a fear of disappointing you, a fear of repeating something painful from their past, a fear of choosing wrongly, or even a fear that happiness this beautiful could somehow disappear the moment they reach for it, and that fear has been standing between their heart and their decision longer than you know. Perhaps you have been asking yourself why love has felt so complicated, why something that should have been simple became filled with delays, misunderstandings, silence, and emotional distance. But sometimes the delay is not the ending. Sometimes the delay is where people are changed enough to recognize what they almost lost, and perhaps this person had to experience life without fully having you before they could understand what your presence truly meant. There may have been a moment when this person realized they could actually lose you. And that moment may have frightened them more than they admitted, because suddenly the possibility of you moving forward without them became real, and when that possibility became real, something inside them shifted, because it is easy to postpone a decision when you believe the person will always be waiting. But when you realize they have their own destiny, their own choices, and their own path, hesitation begins to feel dangerous. You may not know what happened in that private moment, but somewhere inside this person's heart, a question may have appeared: what if I wait too long? And once that question entered their mind, It may have become impossible to silence, because love sometimes becomes clearest when the possibility of losing it finally becomes undeniable. Someone may have told them, "If you truly love this person, stop being afraid," and those words may have stayed with them, especially during quiet nights when there was no distraction left. Because the heart often speaks loudest when the world becomes silent. And perhaps that is when they began imagining something they once considered impossible: a home, a shared routine, family gatherings, celebrations, ordinary mornings, difficult evenings, and a life where your presence was no longer uncertain. But there is another layer you have not seen yet, because the person encouraging this marriage may not be doing it simply because they like the idea of you together. They may know something about this person's heart that you do not know, something they learn through conversations, confessions, or moments when this person was emotionally vulnerable, and they may understand that beneath the hesitation there has always been a strong desire for you. You might even be surprised by who this person is, because the one encouraging the marriage may be someone you never expected, someone who has remained quiet, someone who rarely interferes, someone who appears neutral, or perhaps someone you once believed did not support this relationship at all. And when the truth finally comes out, you may realize that their silence was not rejection. It was observation. There are moments in life when people suddenly stop watching from a distance and decide to act, and this may be one of those moments, because someone has reached a point where they do not want another year to pass with uncertainty, another season to disappear without answers. Another opportunity to be lost because two hearts were too afraid to speak honestly, and that is why the word marriage may be entering conversations sooner than you expect. You may feel a strange mixture of excitement and fear when you hear it, because part of you has wanted commitment, while another part of you has learned to protect itself from disappointment. And perhaps you are wondering whether you can trust the sudden change.